Tonight, our own Felicity Bosk digs into the history and answers a question from Pete, who wants to know whatever happened to the cave Maud Phillips used to live.
Before we can answer the question of if Maud Phillips' cave is still there, first we have to answer other questions like who was Maud Phillips and why does she have a cave?
Maud Phillips was she was Violet Lee was the name she went by. She was a very, very popular woman in town. I always looked at her as she had two personalities. She was two people, that's why she had two names. The Violet Lee was the poetess, the writer, very, very popular, very talented, very smart, but the Maud Lee was the one that got in trouble all the time.
Jane Glens wrote the book The Cave Lady about the life of Maud/Violet. Maud was married to a man named Wilbur Phillips, a music teacher, and together they had 5 kids. They lived in Eau Claire, where Maud published and performed poetry under the pseudonym she was best known by.
She was a woman ahead of her time.
Violet Lee. People in town didn't like Maud so much. She was always behind on bills, didn't take the best care of her kids, and was known for having affairs. Violet, on the other hand, people loved, through her written work in the newspaper and live performances.
Like her husband and some of her children would come along and play some music for a while, and then she'd recite a poem, read a poem, and then they'd go back to the music, then another poem. And it was a very popular form of entertainment. They would have concerts in town too at some of the local theaters and the Opera House and that they had here in Eau Claire.
Maud couldn't run away from her problems by being someone else forever. Quickly, people in Eau Claire would realize Maud was the beloved poet, Violet.
Well, she'd gotten, it was early in about 1917, she had been evicted from her apartment again, and she had no place to go.
This is where the cave and her troubles come in. She moved her kids, husband, mother, carpet, and furniture into an abandoned alcohol storing cave on Eau Claire's east hillside.
They made it like a little home.
A little home they stayed in for about 6 months.
The city numerous times would come down, city officials, and say, you gotta go, you gotta go. But she's very stubborn, very set in her ways.
As the weather got colder, city officials decided she simply had to leave this cave.
And she refused to go, though. So they said, we'll have a trial to determine if you're sane or insane. And she sat there and the jury was in, of course, a jury of all men. And when it was all over and all the witnesses and that, the jury, in a matter of hours, came back and said guilty. And she was found insane.
It was over. Local poetess Violet Lee was taken away to Mendota Hospital in Madison. While she did not spend the rest of her life in that hospital, she also never returned to Eau Claire.
Once in a while, she would put a poem back in the Eau Claire paper she'd send up, but other than that, everybody kind of forgot about Violet.
Her last poem was published in the Eau Claire Leader-Telegram just before Christmas in 1928. In 1929, she died at her daughter's home in Illinois. Glens ends her book leaving it up to the reader if Maud or Violet was really insane after all.
Was she really insane, or was she just a victim of the times?
Back to that question of, is the cave still here? Now, it's probably got more graffiti than it did when the Phillips family called it home, but yes, it is still here. Reporting from the banks of the Eau Claire River, I'm Felicity Bosk.
Thanks for that story, Felicity. If you want to read Jane's book, The Cave Lady is sold at the local store and Chippewa Valley Museum.